Welcome to an introductory discussion of the Ancestral Lines Pairing System, where we're going to talk about the underlying concepts for the system and some of the formats that are used for charts and text and so forth. This is based largely on ideas that a numbering system is actually a key decision that you'll be making, and it should be made with care. This is something Joan Curran wrote about even more than 20 years ago. It is important to begin to think in terms of why would we want to change? Well, there's some fundamental ways people communicate. Here's a graphic of a family group, and they represent people, a young man with parents, grandparents, a couple of lines. His paternal line and his maternal line have been highlighted here. And these people think that way. They talk in terms of lines, and if they work on this, they talk in generations. Just highlighted the grandparents' generation for this particular group. So it's pretty natural to think this way and do it. But you can begin to move beyond that to a more abstract plane in which you say, well, how would we go about numbering these lines? Would we think in terms of an ontophil or some other approach? Professional and non-professional genealogists, family historians deal with lines and generations, but only because it's fundamental to ancestral genealogies. It'd be great to be able to communicate this as more than just with index reference numbers. So we have to ask, is there a systematic way to do this and have unique individuals numbered? Well, yes. As long as we number the lines in a proper sequence that meets that goal, we can use paternal line numbers and parents' generation numbers to assign the branching maternal line numbers consistently. And that's what ancestral lines is all about. One way to look at it is to go back to the chart we just saw and think about numbers and the sequence of lines. One of the best things about ontophil is it's simple and straightforward, but it's numbering individuals. So here we are numbering lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. And as we move beyond those first, we begin to think in an ontophil sense, 5, 6, 7, 8. But it turns out this actually complicates things rather than simplifies it, because there's not a lot of underlying math to that. But I mean, as we go far into the ancient ancestry. Think about what was just highlighted when we changed this chart. We're now branching with 7 and 6 being lines that now will persist well into the past, and they will branch into further lines, 9, 11, 15, and so forth. Wonder what the logic behind that particular branching is, as opposed to numbering everything top to bottom in a sequence like an ontophil. Well, if we take a quick look at the great-grandparents' generation, you notice that the last number there was 8. It was the first 8 lines. And the next one, logically, is going to be 9. And then that would come off of line 1. And off of line 2, you'd have 10. And then you begin to see the symmetry of all this, which was highlighted on the chart. One of the things that we can say is that it creates a symmetry, and it gives us perhaps here the 16 lines that will represent real families. And here we're looking at Kate Middleton's ancestry, 4 generations of ancestry, 5 generations total. And these can be compelling ways to write chapters or to just have a multi-surname genealogy working for you. So it all is important to come back to numbers which are simple, and these lower numbers will persist even into the distant ancestries rather than constantly generating new numbers for the lines. This can be a big benefit. If we move to a 2-number format, we're going to capture both the lines and the generations. Previously, we had shown just lines numbered. Here, in Ancestral Generation 3, you see 3.3 has been highlighted, and that 0.3 means it's the 3rd generation. As you move along, you move to the 4th generation, you're going to see off of line 1 branching 5.4. And let me highlight that for you. And then there's a possibility of going to generation 5. And every one of the lines in its 5th generation is 0.5. So it's really easy to look at an individual ancestor's number and know the line and the generation simultaneously. That's real genealogical information, which here is presented in a pedigree chart, which is, again, the 2-number format. It's just shown a bit differently. And you can go beyond that. You can, if you wish, you can add a numbering for siblings. children being numbered sequentially. And in this generation 5 marriage between McDonald and Croft, we see the first 4 children are there numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. But if you stay in the 3-number format, as there's a second marriage in this case, you notice the next 2 children are just numbered sequentially 5 and 6. Well, what if you went beyond the calculated line and generation numbers and next introduced a marriage number or a pairing number before you numbered siblings? Now you've got a unique indicator for which marriage logically in chronological order. So here's the same text example we had before in generation 5. In this case, however, we're using 4 numbers to number siblings. So in the first marriage, you see 1.1, 1.2, 3, and 4. But in the second marriage, as it comes, now it's designated 2, and therefore the children are 2.1 and 2.2. Unique numbers for all 6 of those siblings. So this, again, is the basis of the pairing system. You show the line and generation as the unique number for each ancestor, and you number the lines in a proper sequence to achieve an outcome by calculating some branching maternal lines. You use the descendant's paternal line number and the parent's generation number to do that, and we'll delve into that in a little more detail. I think it's important, though, to see how visually and symmetrically it just works. For the more mathematically inclined, there's some interesting algebra here where we represent the maternal line as the paternal line plus a factor, which is the coupling number 2 raised to the generation number. So that can be treated each generation almost like a constant, and you can begin to use generation constants to think about this. The rest of the talk will be a bit mathematical, but it's here for your enjoyment. Notice that in the second generation of ancestors, that would be a number which is 2 to the second power, which is 4. Take a quarter of that is 1. So 1 plus 1 equals 2 in the second generation. 2 to the 3 is 8 divided by 4 is 2. So in the third generation, 1 plus 2 is 3. And that type of logic flows throughout all of the pairing system. One of the important things to think about then is how does that help you? It helps you when you're computerizing or programming, but it also helps you when you're thinking in terms of distant generations. Let's take a look at, in fact, the 6th generation, where we're now using 1/4 of 2 to the 6th, which happens to be 16. So coming off in the 6th generation off of line 1, you have 1 plus 16 gives you line 17. The next generation constant is 32 and 64, and you're out in the 8th generation at that point. You're beginning to see individual line numbers approaching 100. So it's very helpful to be able to go anywhere in the ancestral space and have a number available to you that lets you generate the next maternal line, the branching line. Indeed, if you think about the first 128 lines that come from 8 generations like that, it's always a paternal line plus a constant gives you the maternal line. Remember that in generation 6 we saw 16 plus 1 is 17. You see that here in this table. But notice for the 6th generation you also have the great symmetry of the 16 paternal line plus the maximum generation constant 16 gives you 32. And you look down the maternal line column and you always see powers of 2. Well, thank you for your interest. Time flies when we're having fun. I hope you'll review some of the other ancestral line presentations we have for you. Step by step is quite interesting, and features and benefits, especially for users and developers alike. Thanks again.